Hey Revolutionaries, I'm excited to bring you this week's episode with Thomas Fox, where we're talking about all things great. That's right, that's great. I mean, hashtag that's great. Yes, however, great is spelled G-R-E-Y-T. Great. That's right. You'll just have to listen to the episode to find out the origin story of the name. Maybe I can give you a hint here, from gray to great. That's one possibility. Anyways, Thomas is a really interesting guy. He's got a background in business and advertising, marketing and music recording and movies and media. And his latest endeavor, project, brand is called That's Greyt. That's Greyt.com. And he's been producing interesting multi-dimensional events, one known as the Greyt Talk, the Greyt Big Talk, and one known as Golden Hour. And so we discussed those in this episode. It's really interesting what he's doing. He's bringing kind of disparate groups together and mashing them all together and creating collisions amongst these groups and amongst all the things that he has a passion for and that I have a passion for. And I think everyone out there listening has a passion for, if you're listening to JJRR here, which is music, technology, and entrepreneurship. So it's a pretty interesting episode. Make sure you check it out. But before we get there, I have one question for you, for everybody's listening out there right now. How's your focus been lately? Have you been procrastinating? Are you getting work done, or just making lists, of tasks, and you never crossed anything off your task list? Well, what if there was a little shot that you could drink that took all those feelings of procrastination away? Just took them away. Almost gave you a feeling of urgency of, I feel like getting something done today. And then it also improved your focus, where it's like, you know what, I'm not as distracted. I don't feel like I need to look at my phone all the time. Well, something just like that exists, and it's called Magic Mind. Yes, they're a sponsor of the show these days. MagicMind.com. If you haven't tried it, I really suggest that you give it a try. So I've been trying it now for the last couple months. I think I bought 45 bottles. I'm going to buy a couple crates more. I guess they come in 15 bottle crates. These are little bottle shots, so it's just like an ounce or two. But what's interesting about it is that it's got these 4 different categories of ingredients in it. It's got matcha, adaptogens, nootropics, and immunity. Things for immunity like echinacea, vitamins C and D. The adaptogens and nootropics are for your kind of settling down your stress levels and upping your focus. And matcha is for antioxidants, and it's got a little bit of caffeine in there as well for a little bit of a boost. But it's a very mellow, steady kind of you just sort of are awake. You don't feel the buzz of caffeine. It doesn't hit you in the same way, which I really like. Anyways, if you're looking to get your hands on some, I've got a collaboration going on with Magic Mind. They give you a discount code for all JJRR listeners. So you want to go to magicmind.com/Jim Cirillo, JIMCIRILLO, and you will get $20 off your first order. $20. That's a lot. And if you can't remember that, you can always go to my Linktree, which is JimJim99. That might be easier to remember. JimJim99 at Linktree. And you'll find all the links for the show, as well as the discount link for Magic Mind under there, as well as a link for Ko-Fi if you want to buy me a coffee. So if you want to buy me a coffee, the holidays are coming up. If you want to give back to the show and show your love for the show, you can always go to Ko-Fi and buy me a coffee. It's much appreciated, and that money goes to supporting the show, since I have to pay for hosting and pay for some things to get done in the background here. Equipment, microphones, all those kinds of things. You can go there. So Linktree, JimJim99. Check out magicmind.com. The discount, $20 off, and buy me a coffee. I like coffee. In addition to Magic Mind, what I do, I'll take a shot of Magic Mind, and that kind of kicks me off in the morning, like kind of more mellow, and then maybe mid-morning I'll have a coffee. As I take a sip right now. Anyways, that's what's going on, people. So let's get to this week's episode with Thomas right now.
Welcome to Jim's Reinvention Revolution podcast, the show that explores reinvention in the digital age as it relates to career, creativity, and technology. Stay tuned for interviews with professionals, entrepreneurs, and creatives that have reimagined success and are making a pivot. If you'd like to listen to the entire back catalog, visit Jim'sReinventionRevolution.com for instant access. And now, here's your host, Jim.
Hey everybody, hey, it's Jim, and welcome to episode 110 of Jim's Reinvention Revolution podcast. And I'm talking today with Thomas Fox.
Hi there.
Hey, Thomas. And we're talking about all things great.
Cool.
All great things today.
Yeah, all great things.
Exactly. So, Thomas, welcome to the Reinvention Revolution.
It's good to be here, Jim.
Yeah, man. Well, thanks for coming over. This is I haven't done this in a while in person. So we're in the studio today, in the studios of Jim's Reinvention Revolution, and we were just talking about the sound of the studio, because Thomas is, as you'll learn here in a second, everyone, is got a background in studios and production and making movies and all kinds of stuff. I was looking into your background, which I'm going to ask you about. But before we dig into things, I have one question for you first. Since it's the fall, and it's getting a little cooler, the leaves are turning, leaves are falling off. It actually snowed last night, I believe. We're in the northeast part of the United States here, Great Lakes region. And so my question for you is, what's your favorite soup?
What's my favorite soup?
Yeah, what's your favorite soup?
Oh my gosh, that's I've fielded a lot of questions about soup when I was probably in my early 20s and college days. Decided I was being encouraged to sign up for Twitter.
Okay.
And I wasn't a blogger, but they were like, a friend of mine that was in my marketing classes said you should set up an account. So this is like 2008.
Right.
Or maybe 2007.
Okay.
Super early in. And so I was like, I don't know. I like a lot of different types of things. And I wrote that Tommy loves soup, meaning that like just sort of representing a lot of different things. You know, soup is literally wet food, but it just represents a whole bunch of different stuff, like cooks together to there's like kind of the idea of synergy or something that's in there. So
okay. So a metaphor for
it's metaphorically soup, but also literally soup is delicious. So okay. I don't have a particular favorite soup. So
I gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, just to put a button on that, so those are your social media handles. Your handle is Tommy Loves Soup.
Tommy Loves Soup is my handle everywhere on the internet if you want to find me. Or it has been. I feel like at some point in time it has to change, but every time that I
love it, man.
it's kind of funny. So and it's goofy, and
it is. Well, it's memorable. So whoever mentioned that to you, I think it's the right move. When you first told me it, I was like, I had to ask you again, what did you say? Because I was trying to find your Instagram. And you're like, Tommy Loves Soup. I'm like, that can't be it. In my mind, it didn't register.
Yeah.
I had to ask you again. I'm like, no, that's it. I'm like, oh.
Yeah, Tommy Loves Soup.
Okay. So now I remember it.
Yeah.
You know, it is memorable. So that's interesting. Anyways, but I think it is a metaphor. I didn't even think about it now that you mentioned it, for all the things, like pulling a lot of different, maybe disparate ingredients or whatever together to curate an experience. And so that's the thing that got me turned on to what you're doing. And that's what I want to talk about, some of the things I want to talk about. So let's talk about that first, because that's super interesting to me, is this brand or concept or experience, whatever it is that you call great, or you use the term great, that's Greyt.com, the Greyt Big Talk, the Greyt Golden Hour, or Golden Hour. What is this? What am I talking about?
Greyt Culture. I was having a hard time because I was promoting in different types of programs different areas of creative expression. So some in visual arts and some within writers and a lot of music. And I needed to come up with a banner that would serve as a container for everything that I wanted to celebrate within within our live programs. And I was literally presenting programs with different names, and I had these like sub names of brands, but there wasn't an overarching thing. It took me, it wasn't my first attempt. I had a first attempt at a brand name, which was a word that I just made up through, and I created a whole fictional story. I was extremely proud of this brand development that took me a long time. I was extremely involved.
Right.
And then I put it out there, and the response back was mixed. People, there was some people just didn't get it because it was highly personal to me, and it was also just sort of made up. And then there was some people, because of the timeline that it was, associated the slant of it to be in the space of like cultural appropriation, which I didn't intend for it to be.
Right.
And people were taking it that way, and I have no control over the way people feel.
That's right.
So I just knew that people were having this reaction. So I, despite having years into trying to figure out just what the name of the container to promote music, art, culture, in whatever right I wanted to, I put a pause, and then took, was working in advertising, and I stopped trying.
Okay.
And
Stop trying to force it. Yeah.
I stopped trying to force it. I had come through the problem, and then I just let it sit. I kept promoting, I kept producing some programs, and eventually I just decided that a lot of people kept on just saying that's great around.
Okay.
Like that was just a common phrase.
Right.
And that's something that I found, things that are natural whenever I'm working with people on branding. I think that that's probably what my discipline is most specialized in like marketing, advertising, creative in general, is like in branding.
Gotcha.
So the phrases, things that are found naturally, that feel like they've always been there, but they haven't been, that's the stuff that you grab. And so when I was like, not only am I not fighting this, I'm just following the river.
Right.
Like, there was this metaphor, there was a sub-layers of metaphors that I found in there, in things that are gray, that it's actually a representation of like this winter space for Cleveland, is that there's gray.
So I want to mention that what the spelling of Greyt is.
It's Greyt.
Right. So there's sort of a dual or triple whatever entendre there, right?
There's a lot of stuff in there.
Okay.
So to me, it feels really rich. But it doesn't need to be. You can just see it. A lot of people think that it's like a name, like they think my last name might be Greyt.
I got you.
But it's gray to great. So like basically just a little bit of effort to change. And
I like that. I like that visual.
Yeah.
Like maybe gray to Technicolor, gray to great.
Yeah,
right.
It's gray to great.
Yeah, that's neat.
So that was, and it's not a big like push of story that I kind of just leave it there.
Yeah. You don't need to explain it.
And when even when I found that, I didn't really care for the I registered the domain name that'sgreyt.com, and I really liked that domain name. And when I registered the domain name, I had to make a first email address. It was a general email address, so I made my email omg@that'sgreyt.com, and I was like, all right, I love this. Every time that someone
just like fell right into place, man.
An email, I have to say, oh my god, that's great.
Yeah, I love it.
And I'm just a big fan of that. It sort of envelops this space that I just like to find like moments of joy whenever you can. So that like if the idea is that when you send me a note, you might spark that.
Right.
Well, I want you to feel happy to get in touch with me.
Right.
So
I think it works. I mean, there's some insight there of you going with the flow, of you realizing, hey, there's something here, something's you raised your antenna up somehow, right? And you're like, hey, this is an interesting phrase. You see how people are really actually responding to what you're doing.
Yeah.
So it's pretty cool.
Well, like I said, it's just a container. It's an overall overarching. I have the visuals and stuff that I came up with that I wanted. There's when I was coaching, going through to create the branding for it, I thought maybe there would be something with an umbrella in the brand to sort of represent like the whole gray sky thing, which I actually do have literal umbrellas as part of that message. It carries through in a lot of imagery and experience and iconography and all that types of stuff.
Even in merch on your website.
Even in merch on my website.
Which I just looked at today. I was like, why is he selling an umbrella?
Yeah.
All right. That's starting to pick up on it. I'm not that slow here. Okay, good. Yeah. I like this. Well, okay, so tell people, so that's great. So Greyt Culture. Okay, so when I asked you to be on the podcast, I think I was thinking about what was interesting about it was it felt like to me like a reinvention of culture, what you're trying to do, or a reinvention of actually the events that I've attended a couple of your events now. And I'm like, okay, this is a different take. This is a different flavor, which is cool and interesting and causing, I think, many different people to like run into each other, to bang into each other in a different way that you get from...
In a purely sexual sense.
Well, mostly people are clothed, but I don't know. But, like different from like a standard business conference.
Right.
And different from just a music festival.
Correct.
Or whatever. It's like there's something about it that piqued my interest, I guess.
Space between.
Yeah.
Well, I really like... That is my favorite way that anything happens, as that the stuff that you really want is not something that you're deliberately making. We're making all of these things that you're seeing. Like, I really like this. It's not stuff that we did. There's things that we do that create the things that you like as a side effect.
Right.
Like as like, But you can't just go out and deliberately. I know this is all kinds of squishy space, but I wanted music. I love music. I love the concerts, various different types of concerts, but I also love the space for any amount of actual education. I love space of like real, true human stories. So these things can all come together, and it feels natural and authentic to me. And whenever I find myself producing any of this stuff and it doesn't feel right, I kind of I'll pull back the lever a little bit and say like, this doesn't feel just right. So I'm always kind of like, feel like I'm
shifting around the ingredients in the soup, so to speak, right?
Yeah, shifting around the ingredients in the soup.
Well, okay, so let's talk specifically about like these two formats, because I think the format's interesting and the subject matter of the different components. So that's another thing that sort of piqued my interest, because my background, people that have been listening to the podcast, they know by now. My background is in engineering, advanced technology, but kind of, morphed into entrepreneurship and doing my own consulting agency. And I played music forever. And so now with this podcast, it reflects my own reinvention, but the reinvention that the world is having, in parallel or intersecting with me, of course. And so you have components of technology, of business, of music. Like, explain what the Greyt Talks are,
sure,
and the golden hour is. Those two different things, and then we can talk about some other things you're doing too.
So, Greyt Big Talk is a live audience event that is one part exploration of the city, physical exploration of space. So we bring a group of about 100 people, which people can sign up. People subscribe. We've got many thousands of subscribers, people that want to know where we're going to be having to talk. And those talks will take place just anywhere that you can possibly think of. There could be manufacturing floor of a motorcycle shop is where we're going to be this month. Last month we were in a selfie museum.
Oh, right. That's right. I saw that.
Before that, we were in a photography studio, courtyard of a high-end residential condo and apartment complex. So parks, galleries, retail, corporate office floors, like it really doesn't matter. Like we wind up going into places, and a lot of places that aren't necessarily accessible to the public all the time. And they're definitely never set up with rows of people seated,
right,
intently listening to the stories of firsthand accounts from successful creative people and live music performances. So they're an hour long, and so we have a live program, and I'm the host for the program, and we start with live music. I have the space of those 100 people that are there. A few people that will set up ahead of time can share ideas and projects that they have working on, whether they're their own ideas or when they're in businesses that they're employees of, or could be almost anything. But they've got about 60 seconds that we time in a sort of creative way, and then eventually leading to these long sort of keynotes. They're like 15-minute pseudo TED Talks without the like thought leader undertones. They're not grand. They're talking
just real people.
They're real people
sharing their experience.
Well, I prep all the speakers and say that they are one of the people in the room that could be giving a talk on whatever the theme is for the day.
Right. That
they're amongst peers who are also trying to figure it out. So we're not presuming that them being the speaker have to be like the solution to fixing the planet. Like we don't, that's just, but they can just share what their experiences are and things that are important things they've learned. But there's a lot of vulnerability that goes with the way that we do it that allows people to be open for sharing where they're actually at. And because of that, a lot of people that come to these have their minds opened to some different ideas and their hearts open to connecting with other people that oftentimes become business partners or clients or romantic partners or any other way that you might have a beneficial relationship develop in your life. So we can't, people are like, oh, so you're like brilliant. And I'm like, nope, we don't. People by definition have to create their own relationships. We don't do that, but by creating the space in the way that we do, it makes it so that a lot of great things can come out. So that's Greyt Big Talk. It's the opposite of small talk. It's Greyt Big Talk.
Greyt Big Talk. Yeah, I got it.
And Golden Hour was, because we have a community, I had originally named that series something else. I was trying to do, I wanted to go to rooftops at sunset and have live music. Those three things. I had just put that together, and I was like, you want to know what? That's the thing.
That sounds great.
Doesn't exist. It sounds great. I want to be there.
Right.
So let's have a sunset concert series. I'd named, it was codenamed Gradients because of the sky as a gradient. Sunset is a gradient. And then I decided that because there's so much of a focus within our group, this community, on creativity, on like sort of creative, including photography and videography, and like sort of visual cameras. In anything in the film and photo world, we refer to sunrise and sunset as golden hour. I think that's becoming very popularly known, even outside of the industry. The golden hour is sunset. So it was just like, that's it. This is just golden hour. And the brand of the event is that it's golden hour, but this is something that happens every day. Most days is gray. It's gray skies in Cleveland a lot. We don't always get
right.
But golden hour is sunset concerts. Yeah, sunset concerts.
Yeah. Well, there's also a speaker component to it, though, right?
Yeah.
There's there's a different program. Like I said, this is what's interesting to me about it. You said a couple of things I didn't realize, but I realized how it hits me. I guess I didn't know how to articulate it. But one of the things you mentioned for even the Greyt Talks in the morning is the physical space. So like the experience starts, when you just enter into the space, when you go to the location, right? So it's unique locations that you wouldn't have discovered most likely on your own.
Right.
If you're not sort of, just scrolling around town looking for unique places. Same thing with the golden hour event. So I went to the first one this past, I guess, late summer it was. On the rooftop of one of the condos here overlooking Lake Erie. It was beautiful. Beautiful sunset. It just felt like you're in Miami, But you had music performances, DJ, and you also had the speaker series that goes along with that. Again, sort of this interesting dynamic of it's not a hardcore, EDM event with a DJ. It's not a hardcore, live music event. It's not a hardcore business networking event, that's sort of locked down. It's a number of things.
Yeah,
right.
I was talking to a close friend about the development of that. There was that event is long. It's 5 to 6 hours long.
Right. And it's a larger chunk versus like an hour in the morning.
There's something with golden hour. The sunset winds up being, to me, a representation of change. Which is important, Mr. Reinvention.
Right.
So change is important. So we have a visual representation of change that's happening with the, sinking of the sun into the horizon.
Right.
So as the sky is changing, we're also changing the energy level of the event. So they start with the first feature during golden hour is a talk. So the podcast is it's kind of like this that we're doing right now. We invite, and it's an open format as well. The talks are specifically on technology, and we invite different people to moderate them. So if you wanted to talk to a group of technologists about something, and I would stick to you about it being closely related to technology development.
Right.
But you could curate a group of speakers to be interviewed for a panel conversation. And I just wanted to invite by doing that, I can invite almost anyone to be a leader. I'm not the sole focus of that we're able to take that space of honor and let somebody else. We have to approve the panels and the speakers, but if somebody says we'd like to put together a tech talk, anybody can reach out to us. They can go to OMG at that'sgreyt.com and say, I'd like to moderate a tech talk.
Cool.
And we only do very few of them, so we're selective with how we do it.
Right.
But the level is talk, and then we move into the next feature after that is a acoustic or unplugged sort of coffee house feeling feature. It's a little bit lighter, and then after that, it's the sunset feature, which is our highest billing usually on the night, and it's a full live band performance. And then after that, and you're feeling like, wow, this has been incredible, then we take it and blow the top off with the DJs and just like dancing. It's incredibly high energy.
Right.
So there's an arc of the evening that if you're there for the breadth of it, it has not been the same. While you could be in the space for 5 hours and feel like you've been at 4 different parties. So it's very slight. I don't want to make too big a deal about any of it because, frankly, none of these things are really difficult to do on their own, but we're just very deliberate about the way that we piece things together. And then I don't know, I just want to say we're decent people to like all of our performers and partners as we move people on and off stage, and as we move people up onto these difficult to reach spaces where we're even hosting these events.
Right.
So,
well, I was just going to actually ask you about that. So the events are really, really interesting, dynamic, and it puts you in this space. Again, I'm a big fan of Reinvention. Of course, people know that that are listening to this out there. And because you're going into unique spaces, because the event's not set up probably like other events you've been to a million times, other conferences or whatever, other networking events, it kind of throws your brain out of your patterns. Your patterns you recognize, and so it sort of forces you to kind of think and act a little bit differently. Maybe ask someone next to you what's going on or whatever. Like what's going on here? Like what's happening next or whatever. No one's really sure, which is kind of the cool thing about it. But it makes me think about who is the audience? Who are you reaching out? Who are the people that you're trying to attract that are really getting a lot out of it? That you find are coming back again and again. And
well, we started doing the Golden Hour after we started doing the talk series, so there was a lot of lending from like the same audience who's there that's interested in like getting ideas out of their head. People are just, the creative process is challenging, or it can be challenging. For some people, it's not challenging at all. They're just like massively like, what's the word? Prolific.
Yeah, prolific.
People
Maniacs,
are just like
prolific. Yeah.
Just like wake up and get out of bed and just start pouring things out into the world. And I feel like on some days I can get there, but most days it's a lot of work for me. And that's part of putting all of this stuff together is, and even why I'm doing any of this stuff my own, is because I would like to lead to that space. Like there's like a prolific part of me that I've been like chipping away at the gate, trying to get it out there. And so I think that a lot of the people that come are also sort of chipping away at the gate, trying to get ideas that are feel stuck in their head out into the world.
I gotcha.
And that's and then sometimes people are just like, wow, I know whoever the act is that's playing, and I want to come and see them.
Yeah.
And or I know the person who's speaking on the the technology panel, and then they're there, and because they're there for that particular thing, they wind up instead of being in the room with whatever the opening band might be, the opening band is like a software developer or a like chemicals scientist of some kind that they would have never in a million years been like, oh yeah. And that space that you wind up having people that are not, there's no way that in your built algorithms on the internet of the stuff that you're exposed to, you're just never going to clash that together. And when that happens in just the right way, that like bouncing off of things, those, like I said, that's a side effect. We can't do, so we're doing these other things, and then that real magic that winds up happening, that's like a bonus side effect of that just happens.
Yeah, you can create this environment. I mean, that's really the value of what you're doing. And it's just, like the side effect is just, what's the right word? It sort of builds on itself,
Yeah.
So it's just interesting. Really kind of caught my attention now that I've experienced a few events, and we've had a few conversations before this offline. Hanging out a few times, and it was just like, I need to learn more about what's going on here.
Me too. I keep going because I keep learning.
Well, I'm trying to remember your tagline I think you use it for the Greyt Big Talks email, something like that. It's like, this is for people that make things up.
Oh, yeah,
or something like that.
It's a club for people who make things up.
Yeah, it's a club for people that make things up, right? So people that are creative, and I think this theme of reinvention kind of goes along with that. You're never sort of satisfied with your last creation. There's always something else in your head you're trying to get out, or trying to experiment with. And that's kind of the where I'm at these days. I know people listening are, if you're listening to it, I'm sure you're probably in that same space. And what I wanted to mention was, I think this is an interesting model. Now, this is happening in Northeast Ohio. I don't think we said that specifically. So Cleveland area, in the region, wherever. Have you taken this concept to other towns, or is there another model that maybe informed or inspired this that you're, sort of referencing here? Or my point is, for people listening out there, if there's nothing like this in your town, maybe think about creating something like this.
Yeah.
Or get yourself involved in something like this. So what would you say?
Well, I'm doing my best to, there's been somewhere around 20,000 people to our programs over the years that we've been doing these. So it's kind of a lot, but it's also not that much. So I think that there's some digital tools that I want to build that would make it so that we could more easily engage in other places. Because right now it's a lot of time and effort and sort of brute force. Everything, the way the marketing on this stuff is very best kept secret. You have to be in the know to find out, instead of there being those beautiful and simple marketing funnels that things can sort of just fall into place. I know how all these things are made and how all of these things can come together, but it would require a lot of talented people that would need to be employed to make all of it come together. So I'm in the space right now of we're likely to go and do this in other places. If there was a tower that had a rooftop in some other place and wanted to sponsor us to come and run a golden hour in another city and help us with some marketing outreach to do it, I would build a golden hour in another place. Or a Greyt Big Talk in another place. It would just be the amount of work for us to get it going, I think, would be pretty high.
Right.
And not to mention, it would be costly for me to sort of take the show on the road.
Right.
So yeah, that's long-winded as well. I'd like to get out into doing these in other places, and imagine that in the future there will be Greyt Big Talk in other cities and Golden Hour in other cities, and possibly some other programs that aren't currently part of the Greyt Culture known universe.
Okay.
But yeah, there's a lot of things that are Greyt Culture.
Right.
That could get out.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's a great, like I said, it's interesting. I think it adds a lot, at least for me, being here. And I moved around a bit and traveled a bit, and it's just one of the fun things I kind of discovered as being closer in town now. I used to be out in Heights on the east side and traveling a lot. Now I'm in town a little bit more, I guess, since the pandemic at least. So it's kind of one of the fun things I found that's like, hey, this is really, that sort of comes across in a contemporary way, not in an old school 20th century way. It's like, hey, this is how people should be communicating, experiencing life, discovering and exploring things.
Yeah, in person. Being actually, not to poo-pah anybody who's on the internet listening to podcasts.
Right. Right.
But the being out in the world, there's something that's just, when
you can't replace the human interaction.
You can't replace the human interaction. And doing this is different than being, there's a space that's set up. There's always going to be a space for the real, like, bars and restaurants and cafes and all of that stuff are, natural culture. The word culture to me, I went before when we were naming it, I was like, culture just means, and people will say there's good culture and bad culture and all that stuff. Right. But at the end of the I don't like that phrase. Culture is just how people are spending their time. Yeah. Right. Whatever that is. If the culture could be, everyone mows their grass and, does, makes
it's just how they behave. It's like, what are you doing?
The way that you behave, what you're doing, that's the culture. And I was well, the culture that I would like is the culture where people are encouraging each other to get the ideas out of their head. When they're getting those ideas out of their head, that's the individual pieces of personality that people have. It's people actually getting to know each other and, sharing life. There's a lot of beautiful stuff that's in there that that's great culture.
Right. Yeah, cool. Well, okay, so now that everyone knows what Greyt Culture is, okay, that's great. OMG at that'sgreyt.com.
Correct.
Right? Oh my God. I got to remember that.
Oh my
God. Tommy loves soup. Okay. Yeah. I want to rewind a little bit and ask you, like, kind of how do you find yourself here at this moment in time, creating this cultural phenomenon, let's say, of That's Greyt? Because, I was looking in your background a little bit, trying to, stalk you before you came over today.
Sure.
A little bit. And saw that you were, into producing music, founding music studio, founding other events and festivals like Bright White Winter Festival that people in the region would know of. How does this happen? What's your background? What were you doing? Like when you got out of school, what'd you study? Kind of where are you coming from?
That could be a really long story. I don't know how much time you have to go into all of it, but I went to public high school, then to community college. Thought I'd be a firefighter or something. I wanted to start my own business, but I didn't know what it was.
Okay.
Then while music was sort of always a part of my life. I played in bands, had a band. It was probably the most important thing in my life when I was in high school, and then did audio engineering when I was in community college. That was a weird time, but I wound up, because of a job that I had, going to business school here in Cleveland. Mm-hmm. So while I chose to go to business school specifically for marketing because I wanted to get into advertising. I thought that was sort of the creative part of business, and whatever I did, I wanted there to be some space that I could incorporate, whether it was music or audio, or I was starting to get into some more visual art type of things. So I wanted to be within advertising. So that's what I went to school for. And I got while I was there, I got extremely interested in branding and sort of the way that even copywriting, the words coming together, all this stuff that I'm going through, I became just very fascinated with how brands worked. And there's then a bunch of story that we could get into on how all of those other things that is both personal and it is with anybody. See, I wound up actually the getting into the stuff that really led me here was because of the downturn in economy and getting laid off from my job.
Okay.
And just starting going, I'm going to consult on doing, startup projects, like see if I can do any sort of.
What year was this when you got laid off? Was it recently through the pandemic?
No, 2009.
Okay, so like in the financial crisis.
Financial crisis
era.
From the housing crisis, 2007-8 housing crisis.
Right. Gotcha.
After I finished business school, I took a corporate marketing job I had for about a year that I was crushing, and I quit because I didn't like the culture. And I then went to work for a graphic design agency, and that's where I was working way too young to be an account executive. So I'm working more on the sales side with a team of artists, people that I thought were way cooler than me. Because they made all this really remarkable stuff that I had no idea. It just felt like magic that they would be able to draw and create this artwork in the way they did. So I was there, and I was really proud of the work that I was doing there, but wound up getting laid off and started. That was honestly the coolest period of my life. It was probably around 2010. Me and my best friend from college that did advertising seminar together started practicing in a recording studio. Like, it wasn't a recording studio, it was a warehouse space that we had access to because of the graphic design agency.
Okay.
So it was like personal relationships.
Right.
We just decided we were going to do this stuff, and that wound up being we were pouring love and energy into this thing. We had over just almost immediately, it was like turning on a faucet. People were coming in to record music. In 3 years' time, I think there was a few hundred, over 200 different musicians that recorded in our space. And
did you have a vision to kind of build that up? Like, were you thinking really entrepreneurially at that point? Like, I want to start a business? Or you were just like, well, I got to do something.
I was doing something.
I'm laid off.
I was doing something with my friend.
Yeah. Right.
We didn't start doing it as a business. Both of us went to business school together and had the same interests.
Okay.
We played music together. We were doing marketing, advertising together, and like we were just really, really in sync. And so he wound up getting headhunted out to a Silicon Valley startup because he did a lot of technical side stuff as well. And that's like part of the lead into that project stopping and me making a transition. But there's also this giant equal to that project, the recording studio project. There was the art and music festival that I was developing in tandem, which was also just another sort of group of relationships, people that I met while I was doing this like pro bono marketing work.
Gotcha. And so what got you started on the festival? Like, I'm just curious as to what happens in your mind when you're going to school, you're in the advertising business, you're maybe working a corporate job, but I'm just going to produce a festival over here on the side. I mean, that's interesting of just how you would think about it and how you would develop those skills.
Yeah. Well, the festival,
meaning you weren't a producer, you weren't doing that previously. This is things that just seems like they kind of flow naturally out of you. But for people listening, it doesn't flow naturally necessarily for them.
Yeah.
That's like the thing that's always, it makes me curious about if I want to do something different, if people are listening are trying to do something different. How do you crack the code on that? Of like, wait a second, I could produce an art and music festival.
Yeah,
I have some friends that are into it.
Being a producer is sort of like being a director.
Mm-hmm.
Like I hand you a camera, and then you say, okay, hit record, and now you're a director.
Right.
Yeah. Like, what makes me a producer? Like I'm a producer. I just start you just kind of start doing it. Like, and a lot of the stuff that people are oftentimes waiting for other people to give them permission to do whatever the thing is. No, hardly ever is anyone going to hire you to like the job that you want. Or at least that's the way that I have seen it, is like the job that I really want. The only way to really get it is to make it,
to create it yourself. Yeah. Exactly.
So, and it's hard. It's
right.
It's really, really hard. So when in that period I got laid off from my job, I started playing this. I was making the studio, just playing music with my friend. We were doing that for probably a year before, and we'd named the space, because we name everything.
Mm-hmm.
Even now, like when I have an idea for whatever a project or something within a project, there's everything all over the things have names, like they should not have names. But when you when you name things,
well, it helps edify it, I guess, right?
It gives them weight. It gives them power.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Think about names. Names might be they're like a key to so much.
Yeah, I think
it's
so.
Your ability to I say this, names are important. I'm a branding guy. That's
Wait a second.
Okay. Wait a second. Yeah. Well, it's the difference between when you have a pen or you could say, and then like if you have two pens and you name one of the pens,
mm-hmm.
that pen is important, and that pen has more value because it has a name.
Right. Yeah.
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 So like people won't name if you have a farm animal, you don't name your animals necessarily, because if you give them a name, they like are
right.
They're special.
Hits you different, right? Yeah.
Yeah. All right, enough about names.
Okay.
But there it is. We had a place. We named it. It had no necessarily intentions.
Mm-hmm.
We, at the end of a year's time, we sat down at the bar after doing a music video shoot, our first music video shoot, and we're like, this is happening. This is a real thing. We're going to make this thing go. At the same time, the previous spring, started meeting people and doing marketing and consulting, and
mm-hmm.
through some friends at Case was introduced to people that were wanting to make a winter festival, had some student activity money, and they were like, Thomas, you could help them. And I was like, yeah, I'm doing a lot of different types of marketing stuff. Maybe you can help them with like some social media and public relations and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I did. So I just essentially just found some partners that were interested in this thing, and we had some success, but the timing on how that worked, as I officially started the studio and had this influx of musicians at the same time that now I had a festival that I was like,
yeah, you need talent for, right?
Yeah. So that and it was a winter festival, so the timing on how it all came together, I couldn't have orchestrated it. Like this was a period of time when things really felt like they were just flowing out.
Mm-hmm.
It was phenomenal.
That's
pieces even now with everything with Greyt Culture, I don't think that things have snapped quite into place more organically than they did with those projects in 2010 and 11. In 2011, I went to South by Southwest for the first time. It was extremely formative, and the all of that stuff that I picked up while I was at South by with other friends, really just getting into a lot of new ideas and lot of stuff within the technology culture that was present in Austin that wasn't here in Cleveland.
Right.
I tried to find some of those pieces, and the next summer I went on fundraising and my partners had graduated from college and were starting to do their own thing, and I took on the rest of the work with the festival. So I wasn't just doing marketing, I was also on curating the programming for everything that would happen, down to the venues and the overall space how it would all come together.
Right.
And that was the space in 2012 that project exploded. And the video series that I was doing at the studio, I had started doing that, producing that once a month. And the combination of those things, I started getting artists reaching out to me from all over the country.
Started to snowball. No pun intended.
Yeah. It started to snowball.
Right.
There was a lot of momentum that I'm split with everybody with the festival and that recording studio project in 2014, and the momentum that we built up was strong enough. Those things are basically, they would be very difficult to kind of even shut off the faucet.
I gotcha. So those things are still rolling.
Yeah,
both those projects. Yeah,
they still go.
Yeah, it's awesome.
And that's, I think, really, I would have never made Greyt Culture if I didn't already know that I could do it. And yeah, that's just sort of, I don't know. That's just,
obviously that informed your sort of, thought process or your outlook, or
right.
Like you knew what was doable, I guess.
Yeah.
In that realm.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Well, thanks for sharing that, because it's super insightful for people listening that are like, yeah, how would I even go about doing that? Just like the little steps are important, I think, for people to listen to, to be like, oh, okay, yeah, maybe I can make that connection. Yeah,
you got to name things. Naming things is really important. It gives them power,
right.
And giving yourself a title can be really powerful too.
Oh, I like that idea.
So,
give yourself a title. Yeah.
Yeah, well, because it doesn't necessarily feel like it fits. Like
right.
saying you're a producer or a director or anything.
Right.
That's the entire thing with imposter syndrome. People know a lot about that. There's tons of people talk about that thing. That's because you can't, because no one's going to give you the job. In a way, that was it's a Wizard of Oz thing, they give the lion,
right?
The
it's
diploma.
Always been inside you or whatever,
It's
right?
been inside you, but you have that. You get the diploma, and then you're like, now I'm empowered. Now I am this,
right?
Because you need people, but it's unlocking that. And what's really terrible is knowing that awareness of that doesn't necessarily help you to figure it out,
right?
Like, now you're just like kind of think like, well, it's all BS and it's all made up and yada. So there's a lot of things.
All of life is made up. I mean, everything we see before us is made up. It came out of someone's brain. Like every product that's produced, every culture that's there, it really is just a thought process.
Yeah.
And that's powerful that you mentioned. It's funny. I've known this about myself. Like putting names on things is a cool idea. But giving yourself different titles. So I've been on my own as a consultant since 2007. Mm-hmm. And so when I was first putting my business card together for my consulting, I have to name myself. I have to call myself something, I guess. Yeah. So I just chose the name president. I'm the president of Jim Beam Group. So that's my consulting company. Mm-hmm. So I still kind of keep that title, but then I over the years I've changed. There's some efforts of concentration or things of concentration that I put on there as well. So like sometimes it's optics or corporate consulting or whatever, like some other taglines that are a little more descriptive. And some of those things, again, is sort of that imposter syndrome. Like, I'm not sure that I'm an expert in this or that I should put this on there. but it's something I want to learn more about, or something I'm actually doing, but maybe I'm not super experienced in it yet, but I put it on there so that someone else sees me as that when I hand my business card out.
Well, stop thinking about other people. Just think about yourself. Because the thing is, and what about other people's perception? You have to see you.
Right. So it helps me if I want to go in that direction.
If you see yourself as that,
yeah, then
it doesn't matter that like you're communicating. It's about you believing it.
Yeah, exactly.
Like
but that's I think that helps me believe it by putting a name on it, for like overtly stating this about myself. It's like I have to own this. If I want to go in this direction, if I want to actually provide value in this way, I have to call it out. Say like, yes, I'm doing this. That's a scary thing sometimes when you're trying to change and trying to do something different. You're not sure you're that guy yet or that girl yet, whatever.
Yeah.
So that just reminded me of that. Anyways, okay, we got a few minutes left on the podcast, but there's always a couple of questions I like to ask people towards the end here. And one is about technology, which you've mentioned it a bit, and you've incorporating it into the Greyt Talks, the Golden Hour presentations, etc. But since you're involved in this marketing world, branding world, the world of the internet, etc., even though you want to get people together in real life, how do you think about technology going forward? What are you into? How do you stay on top of it? Are you afraid of AI? Like, give me some thoughts about technology, how you think about it.
So I'm not afraid of AI. Not really. I don't think that an AI could do what it is that I do. Not entirely. And technology. So I use the definition of technology, literally the Webster's, like it's the tackiest thing ever. And I don't care. Sometimes I'll look at something and the fact that I know that it's tacky makes me feel like it's okay to use it. If I was unaware of that what it was tacky, okay, then I would.
You're embracing your tackiness.
I'm like, okay. So the tagline for the Golden Hour Tech Talks is the definition of technology. It says noun, technology, the systematic treatment of an art, skill, or craft.
Okay.
And then subtext that may it improve the human experience.
Gotcha.
So that's how I feel about technology. The systematic treatment, building systems. As an engineer, I'm sure there's a lot of people, other engineers that are out that know that there's something artistic about what they're doing, even though we know that we are in the scientific process trying to replicate. When you're building a system, you're trying to replicate. Mm-hmm. So the way that is done is there's not ever going to be one specific way of doing. There's like a infinite, as the universe, ways that systems could come together.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be the best ways that we've thought of so far, but the art, skill, craft, so all of those three things are going to be present to be systematized. We're going to keep developing skills. We're going to keep developing art, which is, to me, like our individual personalities and experiences reflected back into the world, the best that we can understand them. Sometimes those are really, really weird, but it's the stuff that we're like most afraid of seeing can often be the most impactful. So technology is part of all of it.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I like that's an interesting definition or kind of lens to see it through. I think people
that's from Merriam-Webster's. That's how I make that
get so overwhelmed with, I guess, in maybe other lenses or other definitions of what they think technology is. And they get afraid of it, or there's anxiety about it, or they don't want to stay open to retraining themselves to deal with it, that kind of thing. But if you see it as more like, hey, this is just the logical consequence of evolution in a way, right? It's just it's fully integrated within us and outside of us, inside of us, et cetera, maybe that gives people some more peace about it. I don't know. Just one of the, I just like to get people's thoughts on it, just how they're thinking about it. Helps me the way I continue to think about it. I'm more on the sort of the optimist side. If you just embrace it, learn it, you'll tap down the anxiety. You won't be as afraid. You won't be as steamrolled by it. And, the older I get, the older I get and the faster technology moves, it feels like I have to spend more time retraining myself more so, or go out of my way to be more open to embracing it. And so I think that's kind of just where we're at.
Yeah, I don't know. I actually do know. I guarantee I'm not doing as good of a job as I possibly could. I get a little bit apathetic to the necessity of keeping up. I don't feel like that's a factor of age. I think that I've always sort of been that way. But I do learn things that I become interested in. Mm-hmm. That's a tenet that we wind up have. I don't think that you can necessarily teach curiosity. Like, if you're not curious, there you go. If you're curious about something, you will learn it.
Right. Yeah.
If you are not curious about something, you will not learn it.
Right.
So
that's good. Oftentimes I think it comes back to that. I know that about myself. I think that's why I end up being in advanced engineering. It's about creating new things. I'm curious about learning about all different aspects of things versus, maybe a manufacturing engineer or a, different style of engineering, whatever it might be. Yeah. Curiosity. How do you stimulate curiosity? I guess that's what I've been searching for other people, to help them if they're interested in changing or doing something different. What drives that,
Yeah. Some people don't necessarily know what it is, and they're trying to let the universe decide, and that's right. Part of when you put a technology talk on a rooftop and let right. people come and discover something that they would have never, ever bumped into, and then all of a sudden that's their right. missing piece.
I like that. Right. So if you're in search of curiosity, you're not naturally curious.
Yeah.
Maybe think about attending a Greyt Talk, right?
Anything Greyt Culture.
Or the golden, right. Or embracing a greater culture, Greyt Culture. Right. Well, okay. So I have one more final question for you before we get out of here. And that is, through all these changes, through all these reinventions, as I would describe them, can you share a reinvention insight with people that you've discovered along the way about yourself or about business or about art or culture that you wouldn't have known if you haven't gone down this path that might help others go down their path? A reinvention revelation, per se.
Yeah, reinvention revelation. Yeah, I feel like I've reinvented myself a ton of times.
Yeah.
In a lot of different ways, and you can't really be both square and round. There's sometimes when you go down, I'm like, you want to know what? I'm going to learn to do this. And then all of a sudden I'm like in a space and I'm learning to do this different thing that I couldn't. And I was like, you want to know what? I'm really not that happy about some other things that used to be really good. And I'm messing things up because you're sort of trying to be everything. So like,
I see what you're saying.
It's a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
And that, just because there's stuff that you don't necessarily like about, it doesn't necessarily those things that you don't like might be a necessary part of things that you really do like.
Right.
Yeah. So
there's a certain cost to entry. If you really like this thing over here, well, I have to learn a couple skills to get myself further down that road.
They can just be ways of being.
Right.
And that's, so like, I think like in that process of reinvention, I'll kind of feel like, oh, geez, I'm like backsliding on whatever it might be. Mm-hmm. And it's like, you want to know what? I just have to come to terms with the fact that that's not me. Because, yeah, it takes pushing it around to see how, what's the good and the bad, what the trade-off is.
Right.
I keep on trying to figure it out as I'm trying to, like chip away at that wall to get things to come out. So, yeah.
I gotcha. Well,
don't be this, whatever the bad stuff is. Sometimes the bad stuff goes along with the stuff that's what you really, really like. That's what I would typically tell people within like relationships and stuff, that you really like tend to find, when you really find a good space, you will like love people for their flaws, for like whatever their bad stuff is.
Right.
Like knowing that that's also part of like there's like a mix there.
Yeah.
Like
knowing that, failure is part of success. Right. You can't be super successful without failing miserably a few times.
Yeah. Failure's not a real thing. It's a perception in our heads.
Right. So learning or having a struggle or, right. Yeah. It's all integrated somehow. Well, anyways. Well, Thomas, thanks for being on the podcast. I really appreciate it.
It's been really good to talk.
It's been fun to have you over, hanging out here for a minute. If people are interested in learning more about Greyt Big Talks, where would they go?
THATSGREYT.com. That's Greyt.com.
That's Greyt.com. And they can find you on social media. Everyone should remember this by now, but what's your social media handle again?
Tommy Loves Soup.
Tommy Loves Soup.
Yeah, that's how you find me on the internet. I'm not a very prolific person, but that's where I'm at.
So if you're listening to this and you find Tommy Loves Soup on Instagram or any of the social medias out there, share a comment about what soup you like for Tommy. Okay. And let him know that you heard him on the podcast here. Okay. Thanks, man. Thank you for listening to Jim's Reinvention Revolution podcast. If you want to hear more, join our mailing list at jimjimsreinventionrevolution.com. See you next time. And remember, the revolution has just begun. So dig in, embrace the process of reinvention, and start realizing the success you've always dreamed of. Hey, revolutionaries, if you enjoyed today's episode and today's guest, let them know by commenting on their Facebook page, finding their Twitter handle or Instagram feed, and letting them know you heard them on Jim's Reinvention Revolution podcast, and tell them what you got out of the episode, what you really liked, or how they inspired you. I know they would get a kick out of it and will help others find the same value that you found.